Hello and welcome to Time to Talk, a show where we simply sit down and talk about whatever comes up. In this episode, we talk about what comes up after watching a Michael Singer YouTube video titled Doing the Real Work to Free Yourself. Please look for a link below. So we just listened to Michael Singer, and what was the title of his broadcast? Working to Free Yourself. And to me, I like how he brought Yoda into it because, Star Wars. I really liked how the simplistic nature of everything, just let go. And I had the visualization as he described, using all the techniques I've learned for tug of war. And there I am having a tug of war with this big rope, and this football team is on the other side, and they're pulling me. And I'm using all the techniques I've learned, all my ninja techniques and rope pulling techniques, and digging in my heels and holding onto the rope and wrapping the rope around my hands and wrapping the rope around my waist, and I'm just being pulled. And Yoda shows up and says, "Let go." So what do you mean? I'm in a tug of war with this football team, and they're pulling me all the way over there. And what do you mean, let go? Look at your hands. You see your hands? Yeah? Relax them. Let go of the rope. And that makes so much sense to me. And the only reason that seems counterintuitive is because I've never allowed myself to do it. I didn't know that was an option. I wasn't aware that letting go is a choice I can make. I don't need permission to let go. I don't need somebody to tell me it's okay to let go. I can just let go, whatever it is, even things that I perceive as positive. I can just let go and let it take its course. I know you've heard about this, but I want to apply it. That's what came to it's what came to my mind while listening to that. Was recently I was at a training, and somebody came in to speak to the group, and their mentality on working with customers is anonymity. Edit. The phrase that's replaced here refers to an aggressive, fear-based bullying tactic. And I really let that bother me. I really let it get under my skin, probably because that's who I've been in the past. I really bought into that theory, that mentality, that choice of aggressiveness. And it was a few weeks that I held on. I developed a resentment against this person and held on to it and really let it affect my well-being. So two things have happened. One is it was about 3 or 4 weeks later, I had an opportunity to either really hurt this person's goals, like be an obstacle to their goals, or to help them, this person who I had a resentment with. And the choice was mine. And it had also been presented to me in the same moments leading up to this, that my way through this resentment, my way out of this resentment was through service. I was to serve this person. And my concept of service was so very, or still is so very narrow, that what do I bring him, a bottle of water? Does he want to pop? A plate of food? What do I do? And it was through this event where we were both presenting. He wanted the audience to be ready to receive his plan. And without knowing it, my presentation was right before his, and I got them ready for it. I knew he had revealed to me what his plan was, but I was able to release myself from the serious dislike by helping him to achieve his goal of having a good presentation. And I was released through service from a resentment, which was holding me captive for weeks. It was living in my brain for weeks, affecting me for weeks. And I helped this person. I helped them, and then I was immediately released. It was gone, removed. And then listening to this, the talk from Michael Singer about letting go of the rope, um, let go. I don't need to do anything. That the natural course of this event is just going to take place no matter what I do. Why disturb? Why be disturbed? Why encourage disturbedness? Why encourage disturbedness by going back into it? Let go of the rope.
So recognizing a disturbance and being able to process through it in a healthy way is very good. Then to see what in me it poked, that there even was a disturbance to begin with. Because to me it seems as two different things. Recognizing a disturbance and being able to process it well. And then with noticing that that I was disturbed, or that you were disturbed, what in me was poked? That what rock in me did that current hit and create the ripple, the disturbance?
Interesting. Let's see here. So, visibility. Okay, so it's going out. So someone else's expectations, preconceived expectations that others would have of me. Um, Having somebody not in my direct chain of command giving me orders. There's some ego in there. So it occurs to me that while I was released from this resentment, I never fully let go. I was released, but I was still holding on to it, which is why it disturbed me again. And it was only on that second disturbance that I just was like, oh, I will do nothing. I will let go. So the letting go, it could be for anything. It could be for, I like the example he used about a high school calling about the locker, the drugs in the locker. And, we'd focus on ourselves. What did I do? Why are they doing this to me? What are people going to think? Well, what about that child? What are they trying to escape from? I know myself when I was using alcohol, and I dabbled with marijuana in high school. I thought it was great fun. I wanted to do it as often as I could. Now, what I wasn't realizing at that point is through the alcohol, which I started at about 13 years old, I had what I would call now a blackout in my first time drinking. And the subsequent times, never drinking just to have a drink, but drinking to be removed from myself, is what was I hiding from? And that's been the journey, right? That's been the journey, is what was I hiding from? Who was I trying not to be? What skeletons were I trying to have I been trying to suppress? And fear really was what it is. Everything for me results down to fear. What fear was I working to suppress when in reality I'm in a tug of war with it. I'm in a tug of war with my fears. And the answer was the exact opposite of everything I've ever done. I'm trying to suppress, I'm trying to control, I'm trying to mitigate, when the answer is the opposite of all of those things. Those all take energy and effort. And what's the answer? Let go, which takes no energy. It's the opposite.
I don't know if I go there. My experience, and I loved how he put it, if it was pain I was stuffing, it's pain, it's going to be painful as it comes out.
Okay.
Going back to that initial
yeah.
I was very afraid of what happened, because I was like, if that was good, why did so much fear explode out of me? And not just for myself, but for my
anonymity. Edit.
And that was very many years of suppression of that. And so I spent a lot of time discounting, arguing with, and everything else what had really transpired during that time. And it seemed like months after, but in reality it was probably just a week. You know what I mean? Of just all kinds of fear in every direction coming into my mind. Another fear that popped up in that same time.
Anonymity, edit.
He never asked, "Do you want coffee?" Like, not like, "Do you want a cup of coffee?" Like, he just never did that. I'm like, is he drugging my coffee? Is he trying to knock me off now that I'm not killing myself in the shed? Fear.
Yeah.
And, logical or illogical, that was what was exploding out of me after that experience. And I think that was just me being popped through some. I was just so willing to do it, whatever I needed to do to get through my hell and torment that I don't even know what I gave it up to, but it was like and I didn't realize it would be fearful when that first, as Michael Singer says, it's not that God's, whatever you call it, it's always there, this bliss. I was clogging it with shit from the time I was very, very young.
So if I time travel back in time, and if I'm a child, at those moments when I learn fear and I become fearful, if there's a healthy outlet, they don't come back up as fear because they don't go down. So that's the interesting aspect of this. As we become aware, we are responsible and we get to pay this forward, right? We get to pay this forward and help the others, help children. So therein lies my job, is to pay forward this solution to those that come next, including my children, right? It is my desire, is my job, is my responsibility, is my God-given gift of this second life to show anonymity, edit, that there is another way, that she doesn't have to live immersed in fear. There is some. She has some, and it's going to be painful when it comes back up, if it ever comes back up. But from this point forward, I can't control. I let go of the rope when it comes to whatever else she runs into in life. But I can show her that there's another way, that it's safe, and that it's loving, and that it's wonderful. So that when these events take place, it's not an automatic, I have to put it inside and keep it quiet because nobody's going to understand and nobody will accept me. Because that's where I was. As a child, things happened to me, trauma happened to me, molestation happened to me, and I wouldn't tell anybody. I did not feel safe. I didn't trust anybody, including my parents, enough to tell them what had happened to me. And then I would act out. And they would get upset because they didn't understand why, because I never let them know what happened to me. So it's all self-manifesting. I act out because nobody understands, because I don't tell them, and then they get more angry, and then I feel like I'm never not in trouble. Nothing I ever did felt like it was any good. I felt like I was always in trouble. And at some point as a child, as I'm a child, if I'm always in trouble no matter what I do, then it doesn't matter what I do. So I'm going to do what I want to do. Which, when I'm immersed in a world of fear, none of it's really any good. I'm going to look to get out of myself by whatever means necessary. Lying, cheating, stealing, eating, drinking, smoking, whatever. I'd never before learned that if I let go of it, let it out, because that's where it really starts, is feeling comfortable enough, secure enough to let go. And in the moment right now, I'm trying to wrap my mind around what that means for a child. So if I'm a child and I'm told to let it go, what does that mean? What does that sound like when I talk to a child about letting it go? That'd be an interesting conversation to see what the replies would be.
Realizing through this process how applicable the 12 steps are, and specifically thinking of admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being. That, I know, for me was the first time in my life that I even considered, because of my gift of desperation, that I even considered opening my mouth and saying something about my shit to someone else on this planet.
Yeah.
The first time ever in my life. that I can remember consciously thinking, holy shit, I got to do this, and being willing to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it came out in chunks and it came out in varied ways. But it came out, and as that more will be revealed, man, I think if anyone told me the fog would start lifting on my blackouts, I don't know if I'd have kept digging so hard. Wow.
Yeah.
And but knowing the process now and knowing just say it. And to me, what I've realized for me with my path is it didn't matter to who, just doing it. Because I did consider like going to like 20 different priests, like make a, I really did
A little bit
consider.
here, a little bit
Yeah.
there. Nobody's going to know the whole story.
And mine with me going through my sponsorship chain, I didn't pre-plan that. That was only in hindsight that I realized, but I gave it my all at every step that I was at.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that came to me at that time went bleh to that sponsor, you know? And like with my second one, I remember asking her about the fill-in. She says, "No, you did it. Now more is revealed. You don't got to recreate the wheel with me unless you want to."
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, and how that started happening. So when you had asked about children as being that outlet and that trustworthy, non-judgmental outlet it was in sobriety that I had told both my kids this. I may not like what you do, but I will always love you.
Mm-hmm.
Being present,
Mm-hmm.
not having our junk get triggered. Your kid does something stupid, and instead of going to the school, oh my gosh, what do people think? What kind of parent am I? La, 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 la. It's like, what's going on with this kid?
Mm-hmm.
So when we're present, we got our chunks out. We can be there for our kids because we're not worried about the other flack. We can focus on what's up.
Yeah.
Instead of having all the ripples, the rocks out of our current.
Yeah.
I also likened what he is talking about to the mirror effect. If you're irritated about something, I don't know the exact language. If I'm upset, it's something in me.
Yep. I find that to be true.
Mirror effect.
If I'm disturbed, I want to blame outside sources, but it's me. And for me, it's what am I afraid of? My anger and rage, or my fear manifests itself in anger and rage. So when I'm fearful, when I'm angry, when I'm upset, when I'm disturbed, what's disturbed in me? What's wrong with me? What have I done? I got to self-search. Who am I upset with? What am I afraid of? And I don't like it that I'm afraid of things. But it always boils down to fear. What am I afraid of? People, places, things. What is it? The instinctual drives. Emotional security, my financial security, my sexual security. What is this affecting? Well, it's all fear-driven, at least for me. It's all fear-driven. And so yeah, what am I looking at? What am I disturbed about? And
What are you disturbed about, or why are you disturbed? Or is that the same question, I wonder?
why are you disturbed? Why am I disturbed? Because I'm afraid. What am I afraid of? It always comes to fear with me.
I see what you're saying. Me too.
To me, that's the base root. That's the root.
95% of
Yeah.
it for me too, I'd say. I see what you're saying. So boiling it down instantly to fear, that's the why.
Well, if ego is the main driver of my evil, then ego is what is masking my fear. And that is my experience, is that my ego, the manifestation of my fear was anger and rage. So how did I cover all that up so that I could survive in a world and thrive? Because, for a fair amount, I did. I was fairly successful in the world, by other people's standards, which really, now that I'm saying it out loud, that's what mattered. That's my ego, is what other people thought of my success and how it looked to them. Didn't matter that every night I was in the basement. My family's upstairs. I couldn't look at them, so I'm in the basement every night drinking myself to sleep because I couldn't stand what was going on in my life. So why was I disturbed? Well, it was fear of being found out. It was fear that if I really faced all the crap that I'd been suppressing my whole life, that it would overwhelm me.
Did you have a sense of realization of that at the time? Or were you just blindly running? Did you realize at that during that time frame that it was fear? Or is that a hindsight's 2020 understanding?
That's a hard question.
Yeah.
That's a go back machine. So I'm gonna go back to the moment if I can. Um, so the first times I started sleeping elsewhere other than the bedroom was when I realized that drinking was muting or dulling the voices. It was dulling the thoughts, the whirlwind of thoughts in my mind of all the things. And I used to lay in bed and I would remember something from my past and I would become physically embarrassed, like cringingly embarrassed, trying to go to sleep. These thoughts would enter and it would keep me up. And for many years, I would watch the same movies over and over again as I was going to sleep because my brain would focus on the words that were being said in the movie, and I'd seen them so many times or heard them so many times while I was trying to go to sleep that the repetitiveness of the show would allow my brain something to chew on, and I would drift off to sleep. Right? Then I realized that copious amounts of alcohol as I'm going to sleep really worked well as also it was a solution to the problem. It solved the issue of all the embarrassment, of all the anger, of all the worries of tomorrow, which really, that was my superpower, was worrying about what was going to happen, the thing that was going to come next week, the next month, the event, the work travel that was going to happen, 6 months from now, and thinking about all the deadlines and the worry that came along with that. Substances help to suppress that. And I could drift off at some point into sleep or, subconsciousness, no, or drift off into unconsciousness. So what was the question again?
Mm.
Was I aware?
Yeah, were you aware that it was? I wasn't. Awareness didn't happen till after the fact. I had no clue that I was running from what was happening right in front of me. I was so used to living in the anger and guilt and shame or remorse from the past that I would take that and bleed it into the future what ifs, carrying that with. And I was never able to sit and let anything process for myself. And I think that was an unconscious. I couldn't get far enough away with the alcohol and the opiates. I couldn't get out of my own brain. So
Yeah.
then I just went straight into just stop mode. But when I had heard depression is living in the past and anxiety was living in the future, realizing how I was never present.
Mm-hmm.
Any situation, anything that was going on that hit any of my stuff was all the time at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I couldn't be anywhere with anyone, including then finding out all I wanted to do, if everybody just leave me alone, if I could figure this out. Just me. That's all I need. And then I couldn't.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't shut it off. And that's where I started. Then the process of this will be easy. It just won't wake up.
Yeah. I recall that too. The realizing that what I was doing could cause me to not wake up and being okay with that. So did I realize it was fear? No, I was too egotistical for that. I don't believe I would admit that it was fear.
Good.
You all are making me angry. That's the problem. It was always outside. So if I was to realize it was my fear that was manifesting, then I would have had to look at myself, and there was nothing wrong with me. Just look at my ego; it'll tell you, right? And my ego is the evil that keeps me in the pit, my personal pit, which I call despair. And I can't, when I'm in the pit. See, that's the insidiousness. is when I'm in the pit, I don't know I'm in the pit. It looks like everything I want. It looks like fancy cars. It looks like a nice house. It looks like a job with my name on the door. It looks like a fancy stained glass window. It looks beautiful on the outside, or at least that's what I thought.
So here's a question.
Yeah.
Do you think it could have been that you had all those things and didn't realize why you still weren't happy?
Absolutely.
You
All those,
still weren't content? What is wrong? I have all this,
yeah,
what I thought success was.
wonderful. Yes, absolutely. Because I'm one of those that back up. All of that could be true, and a lot of it was, but I couldn't see it. Or I was so afraid and angry. I was angry because I was afraid that I could never enjoy it. And possibly that's because none of that stuff really mattered. None of it meant anything because they were just superficial band-aids. Inside, I'm a crying, hurt, unlovable 2-year-old boy. That's what lives inside of me, is a 2-year-old child. And he was hurt and alone and afraid and didn't trust anybody. Like a feral, wild boy who's just afraid. And when you corner an animal, what's the animal do? A lot of times it comes out fighting, gnashing teeth, scratching, biting, anything to get away. Yeah, I can relate to that. And so how do I go back in time and let that little boy know that it's okay to feel afraid? And I love you anyway. And that 2-year-old boy is going to try and fill up that hole, that feeling of not belonging, that feeling of awkwardness, that feeling of not fitting in. That 2-year-old boy is gonna do whatever he knows to do to try to fit in and feel accepted and feel loved, and that is to acquire the things that people around him have. I idolized anonymity, edit, and they always had new fancy cars, always had a nice house, always had certain things, and that was that was what I wanted to do. Was they're happy, why can't I be happy? If I get these things, I'll be happy too. And I fell into that trap of acquiring all of those things that it looked like it made them happy. So why am I not happy? Why do I still feel this way? I have the same things.
Do you think part of that was also that if you had the things they seemed to like, that you'd be accepted?
I'm sure it did. I'm like you. I'm one of you too. And but the fear was never looked at. The fear was never acknowledged.
You don't know, you don't know.
Because I'm not afraid of anything. Just ask my ego, it'll tell you. Very interesting.
I think for many of us that fear was set in very early, that survival mode becomes very instinctual early, and unawareness of anything but that mode. So fear is vulnerability. Admitting that fear is vulnerability at its core, so it couldn't be fear. I remember someone asking me one time, I was willing to die for anyone. Who am I willing to live for?